This will be a very quick video about how to answer "Tell me about yourself," because truth be said, this is one of the very few questions that I didn't yet cover throughout this series. Maybe because it's not necessarily a behavioral question, who knows? But at first, let's start by brainstorming a little bit. Why would anyone ask you to talk about yourself? And especially given the fact that you've already submitted your CV by now, so you would assume that they have your CV in front of them. So why would they ask you this? Well, the first reason why they would ask you this is because they want to know about your strengths when applying for this role. And the second interesting reason here is because they want to see how well do you communicate, how efficiently can you communicate. So keep this in mind while crafting your answer for this question. The second point that I want to talk about here is that many people underestimate the amount of time it takes to properly tune up these types of answers. And you could, of course, for example, practice speaking it in the mirror or recording yourself and then playing it again. But whichever way you choose, just ensure that you allocate some time to properly answer this question. Now, of course, in theory, you should always focus on your strengths, but some more tips, some more pieces of advice here of what not to do, especially, is to not make it sound like an enumeration. When I'm talking about enumeration, is the same type of enumeration that you would usually do to present the information in your CV. So that's not how you want to go about while answering "Tell me about yourself." Why? Because enumerations are boring. So what you want to do is to give them the main highlights, to give them what they want to hear from you. Of course, quantifiable information is always an interesting approach, and you should think about it like this. Many HR people at Amazon use this question as a starting point for a conversation from which they will dive deeper into details of a specific project. Now, if you give them a long enumeration, you'll make their life harder to pick the most relevant information, the most relevant of experiences you've worked on. So by focusing on some strengths that you had from your professional career, or if that's not the case, from your school project, then you focus the communication the path that you'd prefer. It doesn't have to be necessarily talking about your strengths to be the full length of your conversation, but at least it's a starting point for something. So you always want to have a good start with these things. How do you know if "Tell me about yourself" has a strong answer? And I found that the best way to evaluate the quality of this is to simply listen to what you say and think about it. Is it a good answer or not? Use critical thinking here. And more often than not, you'll be impressed with the amount of feedback that you'll have on your own answers. Another interesting advice here would be to keep it around 1.5 minutes. You could do it shorter if you have some really interesting pitch, and especially for sales roles, but unless you really know what you're doing, I wouldn't spend too much time talking about myself, because this could also be interpreted as an invitation for them to ask me some follow-up questions, which is actually one of my main goals from an interview, right? To start a conversation. What sounds great to you will most likely also sound great to them. So keep this in mind while crafting your answers. Now, this being said, let's look at some examples. First, let's say I'd be applying for a recruitment marketing role, and I'd go something like this. Hey, my name is Dan Croitor. I studied high school in Romania in IT. Then I went on to attend university for IT and telecommunications, and then a second one in business school. I've started my professional career as a freelancer, where as soon as I got enough money, I started hiring my people to work for me on my projects, at first in an outsourced environment. And then after evolving this business model, I founded an HR software business with a business partner in the US. And nowadays I also run a YouTube channel to which I share content that people actually, HR content that people actually want to consume. Now, if you think about the feedback that I earlier referenced and my answer, you'll immediately notice that there's no quantifiable information here, and it's very much sounds like an enumeration. Things like, why would anyone care that I attended high school in IT in Romania when applying for a recruitment marketing role, right? So there's not much interest there to go into details about this. They can see it in your CV, in my CV in this case, if they really wanted to. So the point here is this answer is not the best answer. Now, let's look at another example of what I believe could sound a bit better. Hi, my name is Dan Croitor and I have a background in IT where I have upwards of 15 years of experience in all sorts of positions, from developer to tester all the way to project manager, where I spent my bulk of career, where I hired upwards of 100 people for more than 50 projects on freelance. Then I went on to start an HR B2B software with a business partner in the States, where again I had to hire and build our development teams. But not only this, I also had the unique opportunity to follow each and every step of upwards of 200 hiring managers for the US services industry, and that's where this domain really caught my attention, especially in a digital context where I believe certain HR processes can definitely be accelerated. And I also funded a YouTube channel which has now pretty good interest of more than 5,000 subscribers and upwards of 150,000 people watching my videos every week. Essentially, people are looking for well-paying jobs. So if you look at this example, it's not perfect. I only spent around 10 minutes to tune it up a little bit, but what you can immediately see is that I'm a goal-driven individual here. So I try to help my audience understand why would they hire me? Why could I be a great fit for this role? All the way while emphasizing on my strengths. Maybe they're not looking for an IT person. They couldn't care less about IT, but assuming that this is whom they'd be looking for, at least these are my qualities. So you shouldn't be afraid of showcasing what you're good at and what you're and where you come from. That's very, very important, and I would never hide these elements. Quantifiable information is something that I really focused on here. I talked about numbers, I talked about hiring people, I talked about number of projects I worked, I talked about to give a bit of on the scale on the B2B software that I was involved in. I talked about my YouTube channel and especially about my audience on my YouTube channel. So I really touched upon the more interesting points when it comes to talking about myself while applying for such a role. So this is pretty much it. I hope you found this information useful, and thank you very much for watching.